My name is Tracy Coleman, and at 38 years old, I stood at my mother's funeral, knowing my younger sister Jamie would walk through those doors any moment. 6 years had passed since she destroyed my engagement to William Harrison, heir to a massive Arkansas oil fortune. I hadn't spoken to either of them since that devastating day. When Jamie finally entered wearing expensive black and flashing that massive engagement ring, she had no idea what was coming. What could possibly prepare her for the shock she was about to receive? She thought she'd won everything, but nothing could prepare her for the person standing at my side. Before I tell you how everything unfolded, let me take you back to where it all began. My mother Margaret was the foundation of everything good in my life. Growing up in Little Rock, she taught me that success meant more than just making money, it meant building something meaningful. Even after I moved to Dallas and established myself as a senior marketing executive at Henderson and Associates, I called her every day. She knew about every client presentation, every office drama, and every late night I spent perfecting campaigns. Margaret had this way of listening that made you feel heard completely. When I got promoted to account director at 29, she was the first person I called, crying happy tears in my corner office. My life looked impressive from the outside. I had a sleek downtown Dallas apartment. My salary afforded me nice clothes and dinners at good restaurants and a social circle filled with other ambitious professionals. But there were quiet Sunday mornings when I'd sit with my coffee, looking out at the skyline, feeling like something fundamental was missing. I dated men from work or through friends, but nothing ever felt substantial. They were nice enough, but conversations felt surface level, like we were both performing rather than connecting. The Harrison Oil Company charity auction changed everything. My colleague Rachel dragged me along saying I needed to get out more. Walking into the ballroom at the Adolphus Hotel filled with Dallas elite, I felt completely out of place among women dripping in diamonds and men discussing seven-figure deals. That's where I first saw William Harrison across the room during the silent auction. He was tall with dark hair and wore his tuxedo like he was born in it. When he approached me during cocktail hour, I expected typical wealthy guy small talk. Instead, he asked thoughtful questions about my work and shared stories about funding education programs in rural Arkansas, which aligned with his commitment to sustainable business practices. We discovered we both loved traveling to places most tourists avoided and had strong opinions about responsible corporate leadership. Our first official date was dinner at Ficini, where William arrived with a single white orchid because he remembered me mentioning I preferred simple flowers over elaborate bouquets. He asked about my childhood, my relationship with Margaret, and my career goals, treating every answer like it mattered. William flew us to Napa Valley the following weekend in his private jet. We spent 2 days touring small vineyards, talking for hours about everything from politics to our favorite books. He never made me feel like I should be impressed by his wealth. Instead, he seemed genuinely interested in my thoughts and opinions. 6 months later, William planned the most romantic proposal I could have imagined. We took a helicopter ride at sunset over the Arkansas River, where Harrison Oil had its first headquarters. As we hovered above the water, he pulled out a stunning 6-carat diamond ring and told me he wanted to build a future together. He said I made him want to be better than just another rich guy's son. I said yes before he finished asking. The moment we landed, I called Margaret sobbing with joy. She immediately started talking about wedding venues and guest lists, telling me this was exactly the happiness I deserved. My sister Jamie was only 2 years younger, but we'd always been different people. Where I focused on building my career, Jamie drifted between jobs and relationships, never quite finding her direction. Growing up, she had a habit of wanting whatever I had first. If I got a new bike, she suddenly needed one too. When I brought home good grades, she'd complain that school was unfair. Margaret used to joke that Jamie suffered from chronic little sister syndrome, but I knew it went deeper than normal sibling rivalry. Jamie volunteered to help plan the engagement party at Margaret's house. She spent hours hanging lights and arranging flowers while making comments about how lucky I was to land someone like William. She kept mentioning his charm, his success, and how handsome he looked in his business suits. I thought she was just being supportive until Margaret pulled me aside in the kitchen. She said Jamie had been asking too many questions about William's schedule and business trips. Margaret reminded me that Jamie had always coveted what belonged to me first, and suggested I keep an eye on how often my sister found excuses to be around my fiancé. I should have listened to that warning, but I was too blinded by happiness to see what was already beginning to unfold. 3 months before our wedding date, William started working until 10 or 11 at night. He'd come home exhausted, claiming the oil markets were volatile and required his constant attention. Our Friday dinner dates got rescheduled repeatedly because of what he called emergency board meetings. When I'd call his office after 7, his assistant would say he'd already left, but he wouldn't arrive home for hours. William began taking phone calls in his study with the door closed, speaking in hushed tones that stopped abruptly when I walked by. The first time William criticized me in public, I thought I'd misheard him. We were at a restaurant with his business associates when I laughed at something his partner said. William leaned over and whispered that my laugh was too loud and embarrassing. When I curled up with a book on Sunday mornings, he'd make comments about how I always had my nose buried in something instead of paying attention to him. Jamie suddenly became extremely helpful with wedding preparations. She volunteered to meet with the florist when I had a client presentation and offered to handle the final cake tasting since she knew my preferences perfectly. Jamie insisted she wanted everything to be flawless for my special day. She'd call me with updates about vendors and always seemed to know more details about our arrangements than I did. When I mentioned this to William, he said Jamie was just being supportive and I should appreciate having such a caring sister. 2 weeks later, I hugged William goodbye before he left for a business trip and caught the scent of floral perfume on his shirt collar. The smell was heavy and distinctive, nothing like the light vanilla fragrance I wore. When I asked about it, William explained that his new business partner Sandra was European and had different concepts about personal space. He said she was overly affectionate during meetings and he couldn't exactly push away a potential investor. His explanation sounded reasonable, but something in his tone felt rehearsed. My anxiety started showing in ways I couldn't hide. I lost 12 pounds without trying, and my friend Rachel noticed dark circles under my eyes during our weekly coffee meetings. Margaret commented during one of our lunch dates that I seemed jumpy and distracted. She asked directly if William was treating me well. I assured her everything was fine, but started seeing a therapist during lunch breaks paying in cash, so William wouldn't see the charges. I tried everything to reconnect with William. I booked us a weekend at a luxury spa resort, but he canceled, claiming urgent business matters. I cooked his favorite meal, beef tenderloin with garlic mashed potatoes, and he ate while scrolling through emails on his phone. I bought expensive lingerie from a boutique his ex-girlfriend had mentioned, but he barely noticed when I wore it to bed. Every effort I made was met with increasing emotional distance. But how deep did their betrayal run? The discovery that shattered my remaining hope happened on a Tuesday morning. William had left his car keys on the kitchen counter and asked me to move his Mercedes from the circular driveway so the landscapers could work. As I adjusted the passenger seat, I felt something hard wedged between the cushions. I pulled out a distinctive pearl earring, one of a pair our grandmother had given Jamie for her college graduation. The earrings were family heirlooms with an unusual vintage setting that made them unmistakable. When I confronted them separately, their explanations matched perfectly. Jamie claimed the earring fell out during a vendor meeting when William gave her a ride. William said Jamie had been helping coordinate vendor schedules and needed transportation to several appointments. Both stories aligned flawlessly, which made them even more suspicious. My sleepless nights became routine. I'd lie awake analyzing every interaction, every excuse, every explanation, wondering how long they'd been betraying me. The therapy sessions helped me recognize that my perfect life had been built on lies, but accepting that reality felt impossible. William finally suggested postponing the wedding, claiming concern for my health and stress levels. As he spoke, his eyes wouldn't meet mine, and I saw guilt written across his face where love used to be. I knew I needed answers, and I was determined to get them no matter what it took. The next morning, I decided to surprise William at his Harrison Oil Company offices with lunch, hoping we could finally talk through whatever was driving us apart. I drove across town to his favorite deli and ordered his favorite sandwich. The brown paper bag sat in my passenger seat while I rehearsed what I wanted to say about our relationship. Maybe if we could just have an honest conversation away from wedding stress, we could fix whatever was broken between us. The Harrison Oil Building was familiar territory. I'd been there dozens of times for company events and casual visits. The security guard Jimmy waved me through with his usual friendly smile, asking how the wedding planning was going. I forced a smile and said everything was coming together perfectly. The elevator ride to the 20th floor felt longer than usual. I checked my reflection in the polished steel doors and smoothed my hair, hoping William would be happy to see me. William's secretary Patricia looked up from her computer when I approached her desk. Her face went pale and she immediately stood up, blocking my path to William's office door, stammering that William was in an important meeting and couldn't be disturbed. I explained I'd brought lunch and would only need a few minutes. Her hands shook as she reached for her phone, but I told her not to worry and walked toward William's office door. She called after me saying I really should wait, but I was already turning the handle. The door opened and I stepped inside, expecting to find William at his desk reviewing contracts or on a conference call. Instead, I saw William and Jamie pressed against his bookshelf in a passionate embrace. Jamie's blouse was unbuttoned, and William's tie hung loose around his neck. They were clearly lost in each other, completely unaware of my presence. For several seconds, I stood frozen in the doorway, watching the two people I trusted most in the world betraying me in the most intimate way possible. The lunch bag slipped from my hands and hit the floor with a soft thud. That sound made them both turn toward the door. William's face went white and Jamie's mouth fell open. We stared at each other in complete silence. William's shirt was wrinkled and Jamie's lipstick was smeared. The smell of her jasmine perfume filled the office space. William stepped away from Jamie and attempted to straighten his clothes. He said this wasn't what it looked like and that he could explain everything. His voice had that rehearsed quality I'd been hearing for months. Jamie remained silent, leaning against the bookshelf with her arms crossed. She didn't look ashamed or apologetic, just annoyed that they'd been interrupted. I asked how long this had been going on. Jamie finally spoke up, saying they'd been together since the engagement party. She said it started that night when William walked her to her car. Jamie added that they'd tried to fight their feelings but couldn't stay away from each other. William shot her a look that said she was revealing too much. I demanded to know the complete timeline. William admitted they'd been meeting regularly while I planned our wedding. He said his feelings had changed and he'd been planning to tell me after our honeymoon. He spoke about our relationship like it was a business merger that hadn't worked out. There was no emotion in his voice, no acknowledgement of the pain he was causing. Jamie straightened her blouse and said she wasn't sorry. She said William had realized what he really wanted, and it wasn't me. Her words were calm and matter-of-fact, like she was discussing the weather. I picked up the fallen lunch bag and walked out of the office without another word. Patricia avoided eye contact as I passed her desk. The elevator ride down felt endless. I maintained my composure through the lobby, past Jimmy's concerned expression, and into the parking garage. Once inside my car, the full impact hit me. I drove home in a daze and collapsed on my bathroom floor. I called Margaret but could only sob incoherently, unable to form words that could explain what had just happened. What would I do next? Margaret and Thomas used their emergency key when I wouldn't answer my phone or door the next morning. They found me curled up on the bathroom floor. Margaret knelt beside me and held me while I tried to explain what I'd witnessed. Thomas paced the living room furiously, talking about protecting me from any further humiliation. Margaret told him anger wouldn't solve anything, but her voice shook with rage I'd never heard before. My parents immediately took control of the wedding cancellation process. Margaret spent hours on the phone with vendors explaining the situation in her calm, professional voice. She negotiated cancellation fees with the venue coordinator and florist, while Thomas handled the financial aspects. He calculated deposits we'd lose and payments that could be recovered. Both my parents were furious but channeled their rage into protecting me from additional humiliation. They never once suggested I should try to work things out with William. The betrayal cut deeper when our mutual friends started calling with awkward confessions. Rachel admitted she'd noticed Jamie and William talking privately at several social events, but thought it was just normal conversation. My college roommate Sarah said she'd seen them leaving a restaurant together 2 months ago, but assumed it was wedding planning. Their silence added layers to my sense of isolation and made me question who I could trust. Margaret attempted one family dinner to address the situation directly. She invited Jamie over, hoping we could have an honest conversation about repairing our relationship. Jamie arrived wearing a new designer dress and seemed completely unbothered by the tension. When Margaret suggested family counseling, Jamie said she wasn't apologizing for finally getting something before I did for once in her life. Margaret asked Jamie to leave immediately. My professional life crumbled within weeks. My boss suggested a leave of absence after seeing my breakdown in a key meeting. I couldn't form coherent sentences when clients asked about my upcoming wedding. I realized staying in Dallas meant constant reminders of my failed relationship and destroyed family. Henderson and Associates had a branch office in Denver that needed a senior marketing executive. The transfer felt like my only option for starting over. Margaret helped me pack my apartment while gently pointing out that moving cities wouldn't erase the pain I needed to process. She was right, but I couldn't handle running into William or Jamie at restaurants we'd frequented or events we'd attended together. Denver offered anonymity and distance from the wreckage of my former life. My first apartment in Denver was a sterile, furnished rental in a downtown high-rise. I ate takeout dinners at my desk and worked 12-hour days to avoid thinking about anything else. 3 weeks after moving, I received a call from Rachel telling me Jamie and William had gotten married at the courthouse. The Dallas Society pages featured a small announcement with a photo of them looking perfectly happy. I hung up the phone and cried for 2 hours. My lowest point came 6 months later after drinking an entire bottle of wine alone on a Friday night. I sat on my apartment floor scrolling through old photos of William and me looking happy and in love. That night, I made a decision that changed everything. I deleted every photo of William from my phone and computer. I blocked both him and Jamie on all social media platforms. I threw away the engagement ring I'd been carrying in my purse. Symbolically, washing away the pain felt like the first step toward healing. My work performance in Denver gradually improved as I threw myself into building new client relationships. My creativity returned, and I developed innovative campaigns that earned recognition from company leadership. My colleague Madison invited me to join her friend group, and I slowly built connections with people who knew nothing about my past. For the first time in months, I felt ready to rebuild my life completely on my own terms. What I didn't expect was how quickly that confidence would be tested when work sent me back to Texas. Henderson and Associates had a branch office in Denver that needed a senior marketing executive. The transfer felt like my only option for starting over. Margaret helped me pack my apartment while gently pointing out that moving cities wouldn't erase the pain I needed to process. She was right, but I couldn't handle running into William or Jamie at restaurants we'd frequented or events we'd attended together. Denver offered anonymity and distance from the wreckage of my former life. I moved into a sterile, furnished rental downtown and threw myself into 12-hour workdays to avoid thinking about anything else. 3 weeks after moving, I received a call from Rachel telling me Jamie and William had gotten married at the courthouse. The Dallas Society pages featured a small announcement with a photo of them looking perfectly happy, Jamie's massive engagement ring prominently displayed. I hung up the phone and cried for 2 hours. My lowest point came 6 months later after drinking an entire bottle of wine alone on a Friday night. I sat on my apartment floor scrolling through old photos of William and me looking happy and in love. That night, I made a decision that changed everything. I deleted every photo of William from my phone and computer. I blocked both him and Jamie on all social media platforms. As I hit block, I finally felt a spark of freedom. I threw away the engagement ring I'd been carrying in my purse. Symbolically washing away the pain felt like the first step toward healing. My work performance in Denver gradually improved as I threw myself into building new client relationships. My creativity returned, and I developed innovative campaigns that earned recognition from company leadership. My colleague Madison invited me to join her friend group, and I slowly built connections with people who knew nothing about my past. 18 months after moving to Denver, my boss sent me to represent our firm at the Southwest Energy Innovation Conference in Houston. I felt professionally confident for the first time since the William disaster. My campaigns had won 3 industry awards, and I'd built a solid reputation in the renewable energy marketing space. Walking into the conference hotel, I wore my best navy suit and carried business cards for a company that actually valued my work. The networking dinner took place in a ballroom filled with investors, developers, and marketing professionals. I was discussing solar panel advertising strategies with a group near the bar when someone behind me asked a question about consumer psychology in green energy adoption. The voice was calm and thoughtful, not trying to dominate the conversation like most men at these events. I turned around to see a tall man with sandy brown hair and genuine blue eyes. He introduced himself as Rory Mitchell from Mitchell Renewable Investments in Seattle. Rory asked specific questions about my campaigns that showed he'd actually listened to my presentation earlier that day. He wanted to know how we measured emotional response to sustainability messaging and whether regional differences affected consumer behavior. His questions were intelligent and showed real understanding of marketing challenges. Most investors at these conferences talked about profit margins and market share, but Rory seemed genuinely passionate about environmental impact and social responsibility. Over the next 3 months, Rory and I developed a professional relationship built on mutual respect. He referred clients to our Denver office, and I recommended his investment firm to marketing contacts looking for funding. We met for business lunches when he traveled to Denver and had long phone conversations about industry trends. Madison noticed these calls were lasting longer than typical business discussions and asked if I was interested in Rory personally. I insisted we were just colleagues, but found myself looking forward to his messages more than I wanted to admit. When Rory suggested dinner at a quiet restaurant instead of our usual business lunches, I agreed nervously. Halfway through our meal, I started having flashbacks to dinners with William and felt my chest tighten. My breathing became shallow, and I excused myself to the bathroom, where I splashed cold water on my face and tried to calm down. Rory was waiting by the restaurant entrance when I came out clearly concerned, but not demanding explanations. He simply asked if I needed to leave and offered to drive me home without making me feel embarrassed or broken. The next day, Rory sent flowers with a note saying he understood that trust took time and he wasn't going anywhere. Over coffee the following week, he shared his own story about his ex-wife's affair with his business partner 3 years earlier. He spoke about the betrayal without bitterness and explained how it taught him to value authentic connection over surface attraction. His vulnerability made me realize I wasn't the only person who'd been deeply wounded by someone they loved. Rory proved his commitment through consistent actions rather than grand gestures. He brought soup when I had the flu and remembered that I got anxious in crowded restaurants. Instead of expensive dinners, he cooked meals at his hotel when visiting Denver. When I had panic attacks triggered by unexpected memories, he stayed calm and helped me practice breathing exercises. His steady presence felt completely different from William's unpredictable charm and emotional manipulation. Falling in love with Rory felt like discovering what healthy relationships actually looked like. His love wasn't conditional on my appearance or achievements, and he never used affection as a weapon during disagreements. I began to understand that losing William had redirected me toward someone who actually deserved my trust and love. For the first time in years, I felt genuinely hopeful about my future. That hope became the foundation for building something entirely new. 1 year after moving to Denver, my life had transformed completely. I earned a promotion to senior marketing director and built genuine friendships with colleagues who appreciated my work ethic and creativity. Madison introduced me to her book club and hiking group, where I met women who became close friends. My relationship with Rory felt steady and authentic in ways I'd never experienced. Unlike William's unpredictable moods and manipulative behavior, Rory offered consistent support and partnership. Our love grew quietly through shared values and mutual respect rather than dramatic gestures and emotional roller coasters. Rory proposed during a weekend trip to Colorado's wine country after months of building trust together. We were walking through Vineyard Rows at sunset when he stopped and pulled out a simple emerald ring. He said emeralds symbolized new beginnings and faithful love, exactly what we'd built together. The ring was elegant without being ostentatious, reflecting our understated relationship. Rory's proposal speech focused on partnership and growth rather than promises of wealth and luxury. I said yes, knowing this engagement felt completely different from my experience with William. Our wedding planning process included only people who genuinely cared about our happiness. We chose a small historic venue in downtown Denver and invited 30 close friends and family members. I sent Jamie an invitation more as a symbolic gesture toward healing than expecting her to attend. Part of me hoped she might want to rebuild our relationship after years of silence. Margaret encouraged me to reach out, saying family bonds sometimes survived even the deepest betrayals. Jamie's response came via email 2 weeks later. She declined the invitation with brief congratulations and mentioned being busy with her own social commitments. Her tone was cold and formal, treating me like a distant acquaintance rather than her sister. Margaret read the email and shook her head sadly but wasn't surprised. She said Jamie had chosen her path, and I needed to focus on building my new life without waiting for her approval or participation. Our wedding day was perfect in its simplicity. Thomas walked me down the aisle, whispering that he'd never seen me look genuinely happy until I met Rory. My dress was ivory silk without elaborate beading or dramatic trains. Rory wore a navy suit and smiled with tears in his eyes as I approached the altar. His vows acknowledged our journeys through heartbreak and how we'd helped each other heal. He promised to choose me every day and support my dreams without trying to control them. I felt surrounded by love from people who truly wanted us to succeed. Rory and I bought a Victorian house in Denver's historic district that needed extensive renovation. We spent weekends stripping wallpaper and refinishing hardwood floors while discussing our career goals and travel plans. Rory's renewable energy firm expanded to focus specifically on funding women-led startups, while I earned a vice president position at my marketing company. Our professional success complemented rather than competed with each other. Margaret's cancer diagnosis came during a routine checkup 2 years after our wedding. The doctors discovered stage 3 ovarian cancer that required immediate aggressive treatment. I flew back to Little Rock knowing I'd eventually face Jamie again at family gatherings or possibly our mother's funeral. Little did Jamie know how this new partnership would intersect with her own world in ways she never could have imagined. The funeral home was filled with Margaret's friends and family who had traveled in to pay their respects. I stood beside Thomas and Rory, greeting people as they offered condolences and shared memories of my mother. Thomas looked exhausted but maintained his composure while accepting hugs and handshakes. Rory stayed close to my side, providing quiet support without drawing attention to himself. I kept glancing toward the entrance, knowing Jamie would eventually walk through those doors and dreading the moment our eyes would meet. When Jamie and William finally arrived, the whispers started immediately. She wore an expensive black dress with matching shoes that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. William looked uncomfortable in his perfectly tailored suit, constantly adjusting his tie and avoiding eye contact with people he recognized. Their entrance caused a visible shift in the room's energy as conversations paused and heads turned. Several of Margaret's longtime friends who remembered the family scandal from years earlier began murmuring to each other behind funeral programs. Thomas approached Jamie with obvious reluctance and gave her a stiff, awkward hug that lasted exactly 2 seconds. His face remained stoic, but I could see the tension in his jaw muscles. William extended his hand for a handshake, which Thomas accepted with visible distaste. The interaction felt formal and cold, like business associates meeting for the first time. They took seats in the front row, maintaining appropriate distance from the rest of the family while a hush fell over the room. After the service, Jamie approached me near the guest book table and suggested we speak privately. She led me to a small side room where funeral directors usually met with families about arrangements. Once the door closed, Jamie's demeanor changed completely. She began telling me about their summer house in Cape Cod and William's recent business acquisitions. She mentioned their plans to start a family within the next year. Her tone was casual, but calculated, clearly designed to showcase their wealth and happiness. Jamie looked directly at me and said, "Poor you, still alone at 38, while flashing her massive engagement ring under the fluorescent lights. She said she hoped I'd eventually find someone who could provide the lifestyle I deserved." Her words dripped with fake sympathy while her eyes showed pure satisfaction. She added that some women were meant for marriage, and others for careers, as if I'd chosen my path rather than had it chosen for me. I remained calm and told Jamie there was someone I wanted her to meet. I called Rory into the room and introduced him as my husband. Jamie's expression shifted from smugness to confusion as she tried to process this information. Then William appeared in the doorway behind Rory and his face went completely white. The recognition was instant and unmistakable. William stammered Rory Mitchell and extended his hand, attempting to maintain professional composure. Rory shook it politely but without warmth. Jamie looked back and forth between them, clearly sensing something significant, but not understanding the connection. William tried to recover by suggesting they should discuss potential business collaborations in the future. Rory responded that William should contact his office if he had any proposals to discuss, and left the conversation at that. Word spread quickly through the funeral attendees about the connection between my husband and William. I heard whispers about Mitchell Renewable Investments and Harrison Oil Company's recent financial struggles. Several people mentioned William's poor investment decisions over the past few years and how his company had lost significant market share to competitors like Rory's firm. The gossip mill worked efficiently, even in a funeral home setting. The drama was interrupted when Thomas suddenly grabbed his chest and leaned against the wall, looking pale and sweaty. Jamie and I both rushed to his side temporarily, forgetting our conflict. A doctor who was attending the funeral checked Thomas's pulse and blood pressure, determining it was likely stress-induced rather than another cardiac event. For those few minutes, we functioned as sisters again, united in concern for our father's health. In that moment, I realized that even the deepest wounds couldn't completely erase the bonds that had shaped us both. Thomas recovered quickly once we moved him to a quieter area, and he insisted on staying for the remainder of the service. The irony wasn't lost on me that losing William led me to everything I'd actually been searching for. With Rory, I found genuine partnership that made William's manipulative charm look pathetic by comparison. My career flourished in ways it never could have under William's controlling influence, Margaret's final wish was for Jamie and me to reconcile, but I learned that forgiveness doesn't require allowing toxic people back into your life. Forgiveness is about freeing yourself, not reopening doors to toxicity. Sometimes betrayal redirects you toward your actual destiny. The people who truly value you will prove it through consistent actions, not empty promises. In the end, betrayal paved my path to true partnership. Their actions steered me towards someone who truly deserved me. Have you ever seen betrayal turn into an unexpected blessing? Let me know in the comments below.